Martha can be excused if she's having some doubts. After all, her brother has just died. In fact, Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. When she sees Jesus coming down the road, she goes to him. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. If we listen closely, can we detect an unspoken question here? Where were you? You said you would always be there. Where were you? You've healed the sick, you've cured the lepers, you've given sight to the blind, but my brother, where were you? Now, I don't think Martha is accusing Jesus of negligence here. No, her question is more pleading. Even now, Lord, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. Martha's faith is not so much doubting as it is developing. We want to tread lightly here. This is holy ground. We are catching a glimpse here of this heroic woman's journey of faith, this saint's journey with Jesus. Her faith, like ours, struggles to navigate the churning, stormy waters that confront us in the face of suffering and sickness and death. You know, it's amazing how timely the lectionary is sometimes. In this unique moment in history, in this unique moment in all of our lives, with a pandemic ravaging parts of the world and us bracing for even larger numbers of sick and suffering here at home, we are given this gospel, this account of Jesus and Martha and Lazarus. And as I read through this familiar story, I find myself putting myself in Martha's shoes. Like Martha, we are confronted with churning, stormy waters, waters of uncertainty, waters of constant bad news, waters that bring dark tidings of suffering and sickness and death. And in the midst of the storm, we ask, where were you, Jesus? Where are you, Jesus? Whatever you ask of God, God will give you. Make this go away, Jesus. Make this stop, Jesus. And as Jesus looked at Martha with love, so he looks at us with love and says, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. And then Jesus asks the question we don't want him to ask. Do you believe this? I mean, I want to believe it, but it's one thing to believe in God's power when things are rosy. When things get tough, when I'm scared for my job, or my future, or my family, or my health, well, that's when pious notions begin to become insufferable. That's when I begin to look at Jesus with a jaundiced eye, with a sideways glance. Can I really trust you? And then the real danger is that our fear and the uncertainty can begin to eat away at our relationship with Jesus, slowly killing our spiritual life from the inside. And at that point, we're no longer like Martha. No, at that point, we're approaching something else. Friends, there's a spiritual danger to this time, this weird time. If we're not careful, the fear and uncertainty can eat away at our spiritual life until we are no better off than Lazarus, spiritually dead in the tomb. The tomb will be named quarantine or social distancing. The stone rolled across the entrance will be labeled COVID-19. Personally, I found myself coming dangerously close to this a few times in the past couple of weeks. I found myself pining away for what was, or hoping and wishing for what someday will be again. I wish it was like a month ago. I wish that I could have the people here at Mass with me, so I wasn't talking to a camera. I wish that I could gather with Life Teen and with Edge and with faith formation, and I wish. But the fact is, I don't know how long this is going to last. The fact is, I don't know how long we'll be here. Social distancing. I've kind of realized that I need to start thinking of this less as a sprint and more as a marathon. See, the thing is, when I start to think that way, as logical as that is, that's when the fear starts to set in. That's when I start to get scared. And the more scared I get, the more fear takes hold, the harder it is to pray. And I begin to lose sight of the fact that Jesus is in fact bigger than all of this. So if that's where we are today, with fear and uncertainty and growing in our hearts like a cancerous tumor, then Jesus approaches us today with the same courage with which he approached the tomb of Lazarus. Take away the stone, he commands. Take away the stone. You have fear, but I don't. I don't fear death. Take away the stone. I am the conqueror of death. Take away the stone. I am the resurrection. I am the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Take away the stone. And this is the moment, the real test of faith. Do I believe in Jesus' power over sin and death? Do I believe that he will cut through my sin? Even cut through my own death? Even a pandemic, to never forsake me, never leave me? Do I believe he's with me now? Do I believe he's with me watching this Mass from home now? Do I believe he's with me, with us, in the midst of this strange, unique time? Do I believe he's with the sick and the dying in Italy and China and Spain and New York and California and Washington and Florida? Do I believe that he's with me in life and in death? But you see, Jesus isn't done with just rolling away the stone. No, he commands Lazarus, Lazarus, come out. And when Lazarus comes forth alive again, freed from death, his hands and feet are still bound. Untie him, Jesus says, and let him go. So there's a further question here. Do I believe in the life that Jesus gives me? A life that cannot be touched by my own physical death. Do I believe that he can and will free me from the chains that bind me? The chains of sin and fear and death. Do I believe that Jesus sees my fear, my worry, and yes, even my sin, and that he sees and does not look with judgment, but rather sees and simply says, confidently says, untie him, untie her, and let her go free. My friends, today I don't come guaranteeing that Jesus will free us from physical death, but I do know that he wants to free us from the many other deaths that afflict us. Sin, broken relationships, and the slow, insidious death of fear. And he simply asks us that one cutting question. Do you believe? Do I believe even though I can't come to church? Do I believe even though I can't receive the Eucharist? Do I believe that the Jesus that called forth Lazarus from the tomb is the same Jesus who calls me today? Calls me to deepen my relationship with him. Calls me to draw closer, not further away from him. Do I believe he's bigger than COVID-19? I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?